Senator Cortez Masto.
Thank you. I appreciate the comments for everyone and the uniqueness of the hearing today. Ms. Locklear, let me ask you this. There's two ways to get this recognition. We've talked about that. One is through Congress. You've talked about that.
Yes.
And then the other is through the DOI and the Office of Federal Acknowledgement. Am I hearing today that we should eliminate the Office of Federal Acknowledgement and just rely on Congress to do this in the future?
Not at all. Not at all.
So do you have any concerns with the Office of Federal Acknowledgement and how the process plays out?
Historically, we have, and we have expressed those along with other non-federally recognized tribes in various
But I'm
forms.
saying now, right now, not historically, now.
It is
because I'm here
greatly
now,
improved.
and we need to address this. Are there any concerns that you have with the office right now?
It has greatly improved as a result of the changed regulations in 2015.
Okay. So can I just say, Chairman Lowery, what's to stop you? It sounds like you have the support of the administration. You have the support of DOI. What's to stop you from going through that process now and getting what you're seeking, but go through an evidence-based process to address some of the concerns that we've heard from the other tribes?
Yes, ma'am. Although there has been changes to the BIA process, we still do not know if it's going to take 20 to 30 years, just like it already does. And I don't want my people waiting another 30 years to go through the process. And then once there has been a rendering done by BIA, there will be opponents who can then bring forth a lawsuit. And I have no doubt that the Eastern Band of Cherokee 30 years from now will bring forth a lawsuit that will take us into another 10 to 20 years. And then 50 years from now, my grandson will be sitting here doing the same thing.
So the concern is that there would be a lawsuit to any decision that was made.
Absolutely, and the concern is how many decades is it going to take. So I think Congress really needs to take a look at the BIA process. I don't know any other government program that takes 20 to 30 years to come to a conclusion.
Ms. Locklear, let me ask you, because does the process, is that part of the problem? Do we need to look at the OFA and say this process is taking 30 years? It's too long?
Frankly,
do we need to address this in Congress?
That may be the case, Senator.
Is that true?
At this point, we don't have enough experience with how the new regulations will be administered to give a full answer to that question.
So there's new regulations now that the tribe has not gone through, so you don't know how long it would take. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. So let me ask you, both Chief Hicks and Chief Barnes, you talked about this. Let me just say, I understand the two ways to do this. One's through Congress, but you got to get the votes of the members of Congress. No guarantee you're going to get that. But there's also an evidence-based approach. I'm not in a position to look out in the audience, unlike some of my colleagues, to say who is a member and who isn't. Just like I'm not in a position, and I don't think I should be looking out in my community and saying just because you have brown skin, you're undocumented. Yeah. So there has to be an evidence-based approach. And that's why it wasn't created in Congress. But if it's not working, I would want to know, because that's not fair. But we need to hear that conversation. And so let me ask both Chief Barnes as well as Chief Hicks. Talk to me about this evidence-based approach and why it is so important that the administration have a process like this.
If I may, Senator, and thank you for that question, I'll give an example of one that did take a considerably shorter time, was Little Shell Tribe, where Little Shell was denied at OFA, and then they went through a congressional process. Indian country decried that and said, no, you got this one wrong. The Chippewas came together and says, no, we've got this one, you got this one wrong. This one is a tribal nation. And historically, because of a technicality on Little Shell is a tribal nation. So that is one of those instances where the OFA process, even though it's flawed, and I don't know of any federal institution that's perfect at this time. Even though the OFA is not perfect, it still yielded some results on behalf of Little Shell, which ultimately did tribal nations come together and say on their behalf, look at the evidence, and this technicality should not keep Little Shell from being a tribe. All we ask is they follow the same path as Little Shell, go through the OFA process.
Okay. Chief Hicks, anything else to add to the
just I do feel, as I responded earlier, is that the OFA is it's without question uniquely equipped to critically evaluate all the related criteria, and there's several criteria that come into play based on the claims, and having skilled highly skilled and professional, experienced folks to be able to do that, I think is critical. But I do want to just respond to the other question around the OFA process. We have openly supported the expedited approach, for this group to go through this process in more than one scenario. And we still feel that there is an opportunity to not extend this 20 or 30 years, that it's something well short of that, to do this evaluation properly and to get the answer that is being sought in a timely manner. And again, publicly we support that, and we think that it is a good decision point.
So you would support, if they were to go through that process, you would work with them to say this needs to be expedited by the administration, we want something in a timely fashion?
Without question.
And let me stop there. I know my time is up. Madam Chairwoman, thank you.
Thank you, Senator. I just have a couple more questions here this afternoon. And I'll probably direct this to you, Chairman Lowery. It's pretty clear that a tribe's authority to basically determine to define its membership is really central to its existence as an independent political community. The legislation that Senator Tillis has introduced directs the Secretary of Interior to verify the Lumbee Tribe's role for service delivery purposes. Mm-hmm. The verification is limited to confirming documentary proof that members meet the criteria established in the tribe's constitution that was adopted November of 2001. So a couple questions for you this afternoon. Right now, as it stands, what is required for enrollment in the Lumbee Tribe?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for the question, Senator. So we have a base roll. We have a couple base rolls. One is the 1900 census and one is the 1910 census. And the reason those are our base rolls is because that's the first time that the federal government in the standard census process actually identified American Indians. And so you have to be able to trace your lineage directly back to 1900 or 1910 census. So if you do not have a ancestor that was documented by a federal census as an American Indian, you cannot be a member of our tribe. Also, you have to maintain contact. So we're very big on, if you do not live home, you have to come back home. You have to come back to the homelands. And
so what does that mean when you say maintain contact?
Yes.
Come back for like an annual meeting, or what specifically?
Well, we have it where you have to come back every 7 to 8 years.
Okay.
So you have to come back, you have to visit, you have to maintain a relationship with your people. So you cannot become, you cannot go and get your citizenship and then leave out and never come back home. So we require our citizens to come back and to maintain contact with their tribal community.
And at this moment, how many do you currently have enrolled?
We have just over 60,000 enrolled citizens of the Lumbee Tribe, North Carolina.
Okay. And then the source documents for enrollment are the two that you have just described. You have to
Yes,
be able
ma'am.
to trace back to just those two.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And then this one is probably directed to you, Ms. Locklear. There's been a fair amount of discussion today about the various names over the course of a century, and it wasn't until later that the Lumbee officially adopted their name. Because the point has been kind of disputed by witnesses today and made a little bit of an issue, can you state for the committee record today which historical tribe or tribes the Lumbee Tribe descends from?
I can, and I can do so based on the record that's been developed by this committee. There are two principal sources for that. The O.M. McPherson report from 1915, which identifies the ancestry of the tribe as the coastal North Carolina tribes, Siouan-speaking related tribes, including the Sherall, the Hatteras, and others. In addition, you had the testimony of John Swanton, a preeminent anthropologist in the field, in 1934, who testified that in his view, the tribe descended principally from the Cherokee and related Siouan-speaking tribes. That's been the consistent theory. As a result of that theory, the Lumbee people became dissatisfied with the name that the state of North Carolina had imposed upon them in the various state laws that recognized the tribe, first Croatan, then Indians of Robeson County, and then Cherokees of Robeson County. And as a result of that pressure from the Lumbee tribe, in 1952, the state of North Carolina conducted a referendum among our members and said, which name do you choose to go by? And we overwhelmingly, almost unanimously, chose the name Lumbee, which, as I indicated earlier, we had used informally since at least the 1920s. That's important, too, though, because it shows a link between the current Lumbee tribe and the Cherokee community. The Lumbee tribe resides around Lumber River. Lumber River was named that in 1809 by the state of North Carolina. Previously, it was known as Drowning Creek, and the first recorded map of the area in 1724 by John Herbert identifies the Cherokee residing around Drowning Creek. We have been there ever since. It's the same community regardless of the name. And let me say in one final point that, again, the administrative process that our opponents so embrace specifically provides that if there is an entity, a collective entity that has existed for at least 50 years, which is plainly the case at Lumbee since 1885 in the school records and the federal census records that show it, that entity can be recognized, and I'm quoting here, notwithstanding any absence of or changes in name. It's not the name, it's the Indian people that you're recognizing.
Final question. Final question I will direct to you, Chief Hicks. The issue of costs has also been raised here at this hearing today, and you noted that estimates from CBO are a little bit all over the board, may not be entirely accurate here. Can you clarify for the committee what factors you think might be contributing to these differing cost estimates? And I agree with my colleague from Oklahoma that while costs should not influence a level of recognition of tribal status, it is something that I'm dual-hatted. I'm not only chairman of the authorizing committee, I'm also chairman of the appropriating committee, and so I can't help but want to try to understand some of the financial implications of this. So can you, if you're able, try to clarify a little bit about why we've got such a broad range of estimates that are out there?
Well, I think, as was brought up by both senators, around that question, we've had a third party take a look at the prior CBO score, and one of the things that was flawed in that score was typically CBO does a 5-year financial score. In that particular scenario, they only included 4 years for some reason. In addition to, we're fairly certain that, all of the federal agencies, whether it's IHS, whether it's BIA, BIE, amongst others, were not adequately included in that number, because if you go back to the prior two CBO scores, one of those was close to double in years prior to this prior CBO score. And I think it was around 21, 22, without having my notes. But again, we think there were flaws in that particular score. The estimates that we think over a 5-year period is probably in the range of $2 to $2.3 billion over a 5-year period, if all agencies are included.
Thank you. Senator Schatz.
Thanks to everybody for testifying. I just want to make one final point. I know we've kind of gone around and around on this, but I think I speak for every member of the Senate on this particular question. Like, you can think we should defer to the administration, but we don't have to. Article 1, Section 1 of the Constitution gives us this authority. Now, there is a statute that also delegates this authority to the administration, but it does not require that recognition go through an administrative process. You can think we are unwise for not kicking it to the administration, but you cannot say that we're not permitted to recognize a tribe. That is a constitutional obligation and authority of the Congress, but specifically the Senate Committee on Indian Affairs. So if you want to make the argument that we need to build a historical record and that you trust this agency within an agency more than you trust us, that's fine, that's fair. But this is still our authority, and we clearly intend to exercise it.
Madam Chair, can I respond to that?
Senator Cortez
As a member of the Senate. Yeah, I'm sorry, but I did not hear anybody saying that we don't have that authority. I think it was very clear that people recognize there's dual track here. And the question is, Lumbee has chosen one path, and they're asking us as members of Congress to support that path. And there's another side that's saying, no, there's an evidence-based path. That's what's before us. I did not hear from anybody, nor have I heard that somehow they're preventing us as members of Congress from doing our jobs. So I do, as a member, I don't want you speaking for me, I do recognize both sides of that.
Senator Cortez Masto, I don't think anybody said that directly today, but I will say that some of the organizations that have been steadfastly opposed to Lumbee recognition have actually made advertisements about circumventing the administrative process and undermining the tribal recognition process by going to Congress. And so that's what I was speaking to. I know it was sort of obliquely referred to, and you were suggesting that we were going to, that it would be better if we go through the administrative process. My own view is that this is a congressional authority, that the DOI has screwed this up for generation after generation, and that it's time for us to make a choice.
Well, I want to thank the members of the committee. I want to thank those who have come to testify today. I appreciate you helping us continue to build out this record. Members may submit additional questions for the record if they choose. The hearing record will be kept open for 2 more weeks. I also want to thank those who have attended. We're a pretty small committee on most days, and we don't have to go into a big committee room like this, but I think those who have joined today are evidence of the interest in this as an issue, and I think your presence is important to us as well. Know that this committee takes very seriously, as the Vice Chairman has said, our role and our responsibility when it comes to federal recognition of our tribes and ensuring that the sovereignty that they have is recognized by us in Congress, by the administration, and the responsibilities that we have. I want to thank everyone for the testimony that you have presented in a way that I think has been respectful, which is very important to this, the debate, the dialogue, the discussion, because I know that it can be contentious, and I know that oftentimes issues like these pit neighbor to neighbor, community against community, and that is hard, and particularly when you have been living with it for decades, if not over a century. So I respect the way that you have come to be before the Senate Committee on Indian Affairs today and your contributions. With that, the committee stands adjourned.